2.5 weeks before Election Day, top Republicans are pouring fuel on a growing controversy for President Obama. House Oversight Committee Chairman Darrell Issa just released dozens of documents related to the September 11th attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya, attack that killed the American ambassador and 3 other Americans. Republicans say it supports claims that there was a shortage of security at the diplomatic mission and that Washington was sent repeated warnings about the problem. To drive home the lack of security, Republican lawmakers released photos of the consulate after a previous attack back in June, showing extensive damage to the building. Congressman Darrell Issa and his colleague Jason Chaffetz say the information shows that the Obama administration not only rejected requests for increased security at the consulate in Benghazi, but that they actually decreased security there to dangerous levels. The ranking Democrat on the Oversight Committee, Elijah Cummings, says the information released completely ignores sworn testimony, includes inaccurate information, and makes numerous unsubstantiated allegations. These documents come on the heels of a new report that Washington was warned within 24 hours that there was evidence the consulate was attacked by militants. Let's bring in our Pentagon correspondent, Chris Lawrence. What are you learning, Chris?
Well, if we're learning from a U.S. intelligence official that yes, there may have been memos or other documents that indicated that it was possible that this was conducted by militants, but that some of the argument over this reflects a fundamental misunderstanding of how the intelligence process works. What I mean by that is this intelligence official is saying it is rare that one stream of intelligence will influence and direct an entire report, that they are pulling multiple streams of intelligence together. And while this memo may have existed and this theme may have existed, there were other things they were looking at as well. In the initial days, they put out a talking points memo to Congress and to administration officials to give them some basis from which to talk about this incident. Now, the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Senator Dianne Feinstein, has recently said putting out those talking points may have been a mistake at that time because this was an early assessment. We're told that at the time when Ambassador Susan Rice came out and said this was a spontaneous attack, that the intelligence was shifting underneath her at that time, but not to the point where they would revise a report to give to her to change that overall assessment. I know it sounds confusing, but basically there was some initial intelligence that was shifting as she made that remark that perhaps if it was made just a few days later, the intelligence would have caught up and change the narrative a bit, Wolf.
Chris, you saw that article in the New York Times today, an eye-opening article saying that one of the key people behind the attack is in plain sight in Benghazi. What do you know about this guy?
Well, his name is Ahmed Abu Khattala, Wolf. Reuters and New York Times reporters on the scene there in Libya both spoke with him in plain sight at a coffee shop. They had coffee. He seemed very relaxed from all accounts. Showed no fear about, possibly being apprehended or targeted by Libyan, much less U.S. authorities. He is reportedly, in some reports, been linked to the group that is suspected of having something to do with the attack on Ambassador Stevens. But he denied that. In reports to Reuters and New York Times, he said he had nothing to do with it, that he was there, but didn't command that attack. From our sources, we know that intelligence officials have been aware of him for some time, and that from other officials we've heard, they do have eyes on this group. In other words, they've got surveillance on this group, which is believed to be still based near Benghazi, and they're also speaking with Libyans on the ground in order to gather more intelligence. But at this time, are not planning or are not in a position to say he is the one who commanded the group that led this attack.
Chris Lawrence at the Pentagon, thanks very much. Let's dig a little bit deeper. Kate Baldwin is here with us as well. The chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Mike Rogers, is joining us. First of all, is this guy that supposedly is out there in plain sight the individual or one of the individuals that killed these Americans in Benghazi?
It's very likely that he had something to do with the operation. There are individual reports that actually had him on the ground on the day of the attack. Some of that's still being vetted, to make sure that's accurate. But as the picture starts to unfold, it just doesn't look good that he was not involved in some way in this attack.
The documents that were released today by your counterpart, Darrell Issa, the chairman of the Governmental Affairs Committee, they're being condemned by the ranking Democrat, Elijah Cummings. It's pretty bitter between these two members of Congress, a Republican and a Democrat. Elijah Cummings saying that these documents were released irresponsibly, promoting inaccurate information. What do you think about all of this? Because you've been very responsible, and I know there's a much more collegial atmosphere on the Intelligence Committee as opposed to the Governmental Affairs Committee.
Yeah, two big issues here. One is the security itself around the facility. Was it accurate? Were they making requests? And that is really coming under the Government Oversight Committee. They're asking those hard, difficult questions. I think the evidence as they lay it out just isn't very flattering at the end of the day.
Flattering to? The
administration. Requests were made. The ambassador had clearly said, this, I don't feel safe here. It looks more dangerous. And at the same time, we have another set of issues. On the intelligence side, lots of streaming information that showed al-Qaeda cells in Tunisia. Some had moved in and out of Libya. You saw the al-Sharia developing itself and recruiting in and around Benghazi. We saw al-Qaeda elements and AQIM elements flowing in and out of Libya, Mali, Algeria, all of this happening all at the same time. And this threat information was well presented up to the 9/11 date, the day of the attack. And I will tell you that we were in possession, we being the Intelligence Committee, within 12 hours of this attack that had said nothing about a demonstration, said nothing about a spontaneous event. And if you look at all the information leading up to 9/11 that we had from an intelligence perspective, and that report that came out, it's really confounding how you could come to a conclusion and then promote it for days in the face of all of that information that this was about a video that
and I agree with you that there are two distinct lines of questioning going on, and two storylines really going on: the security situation and the request for security, as well as the intelligence leading up to the night of the attack. From everything that you're seeing, all the cables coming out, and I'm sure you've seen, I know that you've seen far more than has been publicly released. Do you think that there is negligence here, or do you think, as I think Secretary Clinton said recently, that it was a fog of war kind of scenario, that there was misinformation coming out to begin with?
I have to tell you, and I hate to come to the conclusion, I just don't think they understood the gravity of what was happening. Think about this. 9 days after 9/11, think of all the threat information that we just talked about existed in a very growing, dangerous area. Mali had already gone bad, probably with weapons from Libya. I mean, all of this is happening. All of that information is presented. And then in a separate stream, the information on the physical security of the embassy and the ambassador was also happening. 9 days into that, they used taxpayer dollars to advertise this video in Pakistan that has probably the lowest percentage of social media connection than all of the other countries, that fueled the fire. It caused huge problems. So we saw embassies all across the region under protest, under siege, some accusations now that maybe al-Qaeda was a part of some of those. It just didn't seem that they understood the gravity of what their actions were doing based on the information that they had.
I went back. The incident occurred in which the ambassador, 3 other Americans, 2 Navy SEALs were killed on the 11th anniversary.
Former Navy SEALs.
Former Navy SEAls, retired Navy SEAls. Yeah. It happened on the 11th anniversary of 9/11, on September 11th. You and I were together right here in the Situation Room on September 12th, the day after. I had been working my sources, U.S. sources, Libyan sources, other sources. You were working your sources. We had this exchange. Listen. Because it does look, at least based on everything I've heard, as a pretty sophisticated assassination effort to kill the United States ambassador. So here's the question. Was it time to coincide with the 11th anniversary of 9/11?
You know, I'm an old FBI guy, Wolf, and I got to tell you, I don't believe in lots of coincidences all on the same day. So it certainly looks that way to me.
Certainly looked like that to me, based on everything I had been hearing in the 24 hours after we got wind of what was going on. So the question is, first of all, do you still believe that, what you told me on the day after this incident?
I do. This was clearly an attack. I think it was geared toward a 9/11 event. It was clearly a military-style attack that was fairly well coordinated, well organized. They had blocking forces. They had artillery that many believe was prepositioned.
It was so obvious. It was so the question is, it perplexes me. Why did it take so long for the U.S. intelligence community. Forget about the Obama administration. We're talking about the intelligence community of the United States government, supposedly the best in the world. Why did it take them so long to come to the same conclusion that you and I came to within 24 hours of what happened?
Well, again, I want to say, we, the committee, were in possession of information that provided by the intelligence community that pretty much said this was a military-style attack within less than 24 hours.
Were you sure? When were you sure that that these protests didn't exist, that this was a premeditated attack?
It was probably early into the next week, for sure and for certain. Clearly, the information that was being laid out to us, and I mean, the people that I talked to, including people there and other places in the government, it was rolling out that this clearly, that narrative didn't fit what was happening.
Yeah.
And here's the important part of this. Bad decisions were made because of this. This isn't just about the physical security of the State Department. That's a serious issue and needs to be, I think Americans deserve the truth on that. But bad decisions were made because of the narrative that they were talking about. By continuing to promote the video, by escalating the value and credibility of that video to a presidential level, by buying ads in Pakistan that actually fueled protests all across Pakistan, because they hadn't seen the video. And so this is what's so disturbing to me about it. Were those decisions based on intelligence? It's hard to say yes. So why did they do it? That's the question I think we have to get answered.
Not answered.
And what's so perplexing to me, and we got to leave it here because we're out of time. What's so perplexing is that 5 days later, just before Susan Rice, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, went on 5 Sunday morning television shows, the intelligence community told her what they told her, and she repeated it on television 5 days later after it was apparent to a lot of experts. This was a carefully coordinated assassination attempt against the United States ambassador.
Well, something changed between that first 12-hour report and them going out and saying it, and that's what we're trying to get to the bottom.
I believe Susan Rice was saying what they told her to say, but that was obviously wrong. Hey, Mr. Chairman, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, Mr. Chairman. We appreciate it. Still ahead, a deadly car bombing creates panic that Syria's civil war is spreading to a neighboring country. Also, the Romney campaign is focused on Florida.